This Passover, we will welcome to our seder table Egyptian Slave Barbie. Now, it doesn't have to be Barbie, even though Barbie's creator, Ruth Handler, was herself a Jewess. Any doll will do. Egyptian Slave Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Egyptian Slave Transformers, Egyptian Slave Harry Potter, any doll, as long as it reminds us of a slave. Dress it in a Walmart uniform, dirty it up, whatever you want, it's your slave. The doll can remind us that the Egyptians were slaves who never knew what hit them. Of course, there is as much evidence of an historical Moses as there is for an historical Batman. But hey, we're the Jews, the world's most obsessive-compulsive book club. Work with me here. In our book, the men, women, and children of Egypt had been enslaved centuries earlier by Donny Osmond. Joseph. They were the property of Pharaoh, the Goldman Sachs of his day. The Egyptian slaves had never heard of Israel's God. Pharaoh had never heard of Israel's God.
I do not know your God.
I do not know this God.
The God I do not know, have never heard of.
Imagine some Canadians coming down to Washington, going into the office and saying to President Individual 1, "The flying spaghetti monster demands that you let your nuclear weapons go!" The whole country would look at him like, all your everyday Egyptian slave knew was that suddenly the water was undrinkable, like in Flint, Michigan. Bugs were everywhere, frogs popping up all over the joint, the weather was crazy, Facebook was down, it was a catastrophe! You can imagine starving families running out of their burning shacks with hail flying all around thinking, WTF! Not that the answer would have been satisfying. You're suffering because a God you've never heard of wants to show people you've never met that he is the most vicious of all the deities you cannot see. In the story, the Israelites didn't know what was happening either. Unlike the Africans enslaved in the U.S., the Israelites did not have to struggle and suffer and fight for their freedom. They just got to sit back and watch the action movie. We Jews have no stories about Israelites helping out their suffering Egyptian slave neighbors. There was no Israelite Schindler. We do say that Yahweh softened the hearts of the Egyptians, turning them into zombie philanthropists. Yes, Israel, take all our possessions. You can return them when there's a Cubs White Sox Subway World Series. Says me, sacrificing 10 drops of wine does not come close to reminding us of the immense sacrifices of the Egyptian slaves who were everybody. At our seder, after dipping the wine, we will pass around Egyptian Slave Barbie, or G.I. Joe, or whomever. And borrowing from the Pope, who wears the yarmulke, by the way, making him Jew-ish, we will pour water onto the feet of the doll, serving as a gesture of humble recognition of the immense price paid by all the other slaves, who were everybody else, that they paid for Israelite freedom. So get a doll, or doll feet, or whatever you identify with as slave feet. Get all humble and empathetic about Pesach. This Passover, let us not pass over the Egyptian slaves.